Okay, we're recording. Welcome to 12.3's virtual user groups. And this is the start of our next campaign of 10 classes. Today's the first one. We're going to talk about the use of the company entity, how to relate company records to contacts. Let me mute that. And how to set up what are called linked fields. And we are going to use the ACT demo database, which everybody has a copy of. I'm using ACT V18, which is also known as ACT 2016. So you can see at the top, this is called the 2016 demo. Every ACT ships with a demo database. The user login is Chris Huffman, like you see here. And there is no password, so you can always practice on the demo database before you start messing up your production database. So talk about the use of companies. ACT started out its first 15 years or so with just contacts. If I go to a contact here, I'm at the contacts part of ACT. It says so right here in the top left. And each contact here can have a company. So this is Jonathan Summer. He works for a company called CH Tech One. Juliet also works for CH Tech One, and so does Melissa. A lot of people work at the same company. So we can create another entity. In ACT 2006, they added the company entity. And you can then organize contacts into these companies, plus you can share data between them. And why would you want to do this? Well, sometimes I would see in the contact record, I would see like an SIC code or a tax number or a number of employees. And Melissa doesn't have employees technically. CH Tech One might have employees. So sometimes you want to track company data. And if you put like a tax number in the Melissa's record, you got to put it in Juliet's record too, and you got to put it in Jonathan's record. So it's easier to just have one single CH Tech One company. I'm going to go up here to click on CH Tech One. If I see a blue hyperlink, that's going to take me to the companies module here. Now you see in the upper left it says companies. I get a different screen. But this is the CH Tech One company. I'm going to mute everybody just because we're recording, and that means if you want to ask a question, please. Here's a bagel. Cool, thank you. Please chat. It looks like you're all real good at that. So let me see if I can mute everybody. I'm sorry, I tried to mute everybody and I muted me. All right, hold on. Having some audio problems here. Okay, so what I meant to say was I'm in the companies part of ACT, top left, and we have one company called CH Tech One. Actually, this one's a little complicated. There's divisions within the company. You can do that with ACT. But all these people are organized. These were all individual contacts. If I click on Juliet, it takes me back to the contacts part of ACT, and I'm on Juliet's record. And if I click on this hyperlinked CH Tech One, it takes me back to the companies part of ACT, and now I'm on the company record, and I can see the other contacts here. One of the things that's very interesting about all this is all these other tabs mostly roll up. In other words, if I go to Juliet's record here, and I look at her history, she has 53 histories, meetings and so forth, emails, phone calls, it's all meetings. When I click on the company, the history of each of these people rolls up into this single view. Let me just pull it over and try to show you. So I can see that this was a field changed history. It's in the Chris Huffman record. This meeting was with Juliet. So if I want to see what's going on at the CH Tech 1 company, at the company level, I may not want to have to dig through all of the contacts and look at the history. I can see all the history rolled up. There are 413 total history records among these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 contacts. And it's true of opportunities. All the opportunities would roll up. All the activities roll up. What doesn't roll up are documents. I don't know why. I view it as a flaw. However, if I have a document with Juliet and a document with Jonathan and a document with Sarah, and I click on the Documents tab, I see nothing here. I don't know why that is, but that's the way it is. But the histories do roll up, and so it's good to kind of see the company level history, especially if you work with a large organization and you know 30, 40 people in it. So I want to first show you how to, we all know how to create a contact, but I'm going to show you how to create a company. I will go to a contact. There are a couple of ways of doing this. Always in ACT, there's a couple of ways. Let me look up all contacts. I can tell which contacts are linked to a company because their company field has a hyperlink in it. I can see that Christy Cameron works at American Dreams, and so does Haley Frieda. However, there's no hyperlink there, so looking at this, I can tell that they're just two contact records that happen to have the same company name. I can also see down here that Emily Dunn and Betty James are both in Boomer's Artworks, but that Jane and Richard are not. And this is where it can get confusing. I can see that Emily and Betty are at the Scottsdale, Arizona location, whereas Jane and Richard are in Whitley Bay and Bodega Bay. I'm sorry, Whitley Bay and Newcastle on Tyne. So they're not really at the same location. So this can get a little complicated, but I'll show you all the different options. First, let me take Christy Cameron here, and let's say I want to create a company called American Dreams. It's easy to just go to Christy's record. I'm on it by selecting it. I can also go to Detail View and see, I should have double-clicked on it. There's Christy Cameron's record, and her company field is not hyperlinked. If I go up to Contacts, down at the bottom it says Create a Company from the contact. So if I do that, it will create a company called American Dreams. There it is. It inherited Christy's address. And if I go to Contacts here, this company has one contact in it. So it added the company, plus it linked Christy to this company. So that's an easy way to do it. I could have manually typed all this in and then manually linked the two, but the easier way to do it is from the contact. Just go down here and say create a company from the contact. This is gray now because it's already been done. However, I can go back to the list view, and now I have Haley Frieda. She's at the same Allen, Texas location. She's not part of this company yet. So let's go to her record. See, this is not hyperlinked. She appears to be at the same company. And I can go up here to Contacts, and I can see there's two options here. One is to add them to a company, and one is to link them to a company. And I'll explain that very soon. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to link her to a company. So I click on that, and it asks me, which company do you want to link her to? And it's guessing you want to link her to American Dreams because it's close to what's in there. So I'll say yes. And now she's linked, and I got some wacky error. Don't worry about that. Oh, this is one of the plugins we write for our own business. So now Haley is part of American Dreams. And in fact, if I click on the American Dreams company, this company now has two people. So just to review, I'm on a contact. I'll go to a different one here. Lauren Ingram, I can tell she's not part of a company because it's not blue. I go up here and I create a company from her record, and now she is. So now that I've created the company, I can add other people to it. So that's kind of a quick way to do that. Now, a couple more things you can do. Linking the contact and the company records share certain fields. For instance, if I move American Dreams, let's say they relocate to Buffalo, New York. And I hit save. It asks me, do I want to update the linked fields? And I'll say yes. And so I save the new address in the company record. If I go to Christy Cameron, her address also updated. So the link between companies and contacts includes certain fields updating. Let's say like ID status. If I go to American Dreams and I say that they are now a sold company, or they're now a customer, and I hit save, I can update it, and it will make customers say under Christy and Haley. Usually that's what you want to have happen, but you may not. For instance, Haley, maybe the company moved to Buffalo, but Haley stayed in Texas, and you don't want her address to change. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. What I want to show you next is how to build these linked fields. And in fact, when I made the change, there was an option to view the linked field. So I'll do that. I'll change this to a competitor now. Save it. And it says here, view linked fields. If I click on this, it shows me the fields that the two companies are sharing. And it's the edge. This is by default out of ACT. So your ACT does this out of the box. But you can add other linked fields, and you can turn off these if you don't want them to be on. So there's a ID status, phone number, state, website, zip code. And so I'll show you now how to add another field. We have to, you have to be an administrator, and you got to go into the Define Fields module, which we do another session on. But when I go in here, these are my company fields, and there's one here called Customer ID. We'll look at the address. It's right here. Address 1 is linked to the contact field, address 1. If I didn't want to link addresses for some reason, I could click on this, and right here I would turn off the link. So when we do the field customizations, we'll talk about that some more, but if I didn't want addresses to update, I would go in and unlink all the address fields. Or if I didn't want ID status, we'll just go down here to ID status. And again, that's linked to the contact field ID status. So that's how you create links, field links between them. If you had a tax ID field in both contact and company, we could set them on both, build them on both entities, and then check the link box, and then the fields would update every time you changed. It only goes one direction. If you change it on the company, it goes down to the contact. You'll see here, but if I change it on the contact, it does not go up to the company. If I go to Christy Cameron's record here, and I move her to Pennsylvania, it does not change American Dreams. American Dreams stayed New York. If I change the company to Pennsylvania, it asks me if I want to update, and I say yes, and now everybody's in Pennsylvania. So it's a top-down type of thing. But those are linked fields. If you ever want to know what fields in your database are linked, if you go up to companies, about halfway down it says view linked fields. This is also if you're in contacts, and I go to contacts, about view linked fields is down towards the bottom here. So it always shows you what links we have going on between the two. So a slight variation of all this is, what if I don't want the fields to update? I want to put Brenda in a company, but I don't want her address to update. Well, then what I would do is I would add her to the company. I wouldn't link her. And so what I would do is I would go to my list here, and let me look up everybody. Let's say I've got a person here named Chris Noble, and I want to add him to the American Dreams Company, but I don't want to link him because he's in Washington, and he's maybe a rep or he's affiliated. He's not really at that location, and he's not really an employee. But I can go to the contacts, and instead of linking him to a company, I can add him to a company. And if I do that, again, I get a list of all the companies, and there's the American Dreams Company, so I'll add him to that. I can add him to other companies as well. I can add him to Brandy's Bakery, and it'll link him to both. I'm sorry, not link, add him. And so you'll see his company didn't change, but this record is now part of the American Dreams Company. And if I go to companies, and I go to American Dreams, there's Chris Noble. Even though his company is not American Dreams, he's not in Pennsylvania. So his record is kind of associated with the company but not linked. And I hope I made that clear enough. It can be confusing, but if you wanted to associate, you know, say a distributor or a sales rep with a company, but they're not really at that location, I would use the add to company feature. Just got to be, you know, it's nice feature, like if American Dreams had 30 people and they move, I don't have to go into 30 records and manually update the address. I just do it at once. So there's some benefits to all that. So I've showed you now how to, I'm on a contact record and I want to either create a company that doesn't exist, or if the company does exist, I can add them or link them. Another way to do this is to be on a company. Say I'm on American Dreams, and I find out there's another person there we need to work with. If I'm in companies, I can actually create a contact from this company. And so you'll see there's an American Dreams company already linked with the PA address, and all I really have to do is put in his name. So we'll call him Scott Towell and save it. So I've actually created a whole new record from a company record. So you can create a company from a contact or a contact from a company, and the associations get built. And you might say, Geoff, that's all really great stuff. I wish I knew all about that 10 years ago when I built my database, but now I have 20,000 records that aren't linked, and I don't want to manually go in and link them. A couple years ago, ACT added a feature. You have to be an administrator. If you have synchronizers and stuff, be a little careful because this is a wholesale big change to the database. But in your preferences, tools, preferences, way over in the admin panel, there's a thing called set company options. Got to be an administrator to get to this panel. And there's this thing called company creation. I will just read it out loud. To create a new company when this many contacts have the same company name. If set to 0, companies are not automatically created. So I've got mine on 0. I have this feature off, and that ought to tell you something. But if I set this to 2, it means that anytime I got 2 people with exactly the same company name, then the company will be created and they'll both be linked to it automatically. So if I type in 2 people, that's a company. 1 person's a guy, I guess, or a person. So you can actually make this automatic. As I said, I'd make a backup first. Be careful about what happens next. It could tear through your database. Things like what happens if I have 2 people where the company name is blank, for instance. Let me go back to look up all contacts. These 3 people all work for the same invisible company. Possible they'll get linked and put into the invisible company. We all have people in the database who create invisible records, and so what happens to those, anybody's guess. Be careful. But it would go through, and like I have bodegas, bodacious birds down here, I got 2 people. It should create the company, and it should automatically associate these 2 people. Finally, one last thing I want to talk about is a little advanced topic with companies. You can actually have divisions within a company. So I have the American Dreams company here. If I right-click, I can create a division underneath it. And we'll call it American Nightmares. And maybe that's in Oregon. So if I hit OK, you'll see that under American Dreams, the Nightmares division is underneath it, and that can have its own contacts as well. So I could go to American Dreams here and take Scott Towell, and let me see, if I go to contacts, I have to unlink him from the American Dreams company, so I can just unlink him, and then he becomes his own little person again. But if I hit link to a different company, I can then pick American Nightmares and move him down to that company. This is a billing program we write for our act that's not running in this demo version. That's why I'm getting these errors. And when you do link a record or unlink a record, okay, Brenda asked a question. That didn't sink in. Why 2? Why did I set it to 2? Because that's a number I picked. You might be, if I have one person from a company, I'm not sure I need a company record. Remember what I said is things roll up. So if I have just a one-person Chris Noble company, and he's the only person in it, actually this American Nightmares is one person. His history is the same history as his record. To me, it's just all the information in the contact record is rolled up to the company record, but it's the same because it's just one person. In my mind, 2 people make a company, 1 person is a person, 2 people is an organization. But you could set the threshold to whatever you want. That's why that button's there. If I have, 30 people, I want to be able to view all their stuff rolled into one view, maybe with 2. Good question. Can you show how you got to the division tab again? Well, I just went to companies here, and I right-click and I add a division. And if I go to Nightmares, I can start another division called, Really Scary Division. So I can go as deep, I believe at least 16 levels deep, which I've never seen anybody exceed. It may be infinite. But I just right-click and I create a division, and then I can link people to the division just like it's a company. And I can actually tell by looking at this list that Verge Records here has a studio, and Widget has 2 divisions underneath it. You can also drag these divisions around. So if I want to make Really Scary not a division of Nightmares, I can move it up to Dreams and ask you if you really want to do this, and now it's equal to American Nightmares. So it's really a matter of drag and drop with these divisions. Okay, so that's the relationship between contacts and companies. I guess the last thing I would show you is, can this feature be used to create families? For example, husband and wife have separate contacts, and the company's a family showing history for both. Yeah, I actually believe, like in the wealth management business, that's an excellent use of this. All a company is a collection of contacts, a lot like groups, actually. So I could build a company called, the Buffett family, and then under title, this is the company, but in the contacts here, I could start creating, create a contact from the company. So I will create Warren Buffett. And then if I save that, I go to the Buffett family. It now has 1 guy in there, so now I'll create another one. And I'll call him, sorry, I'm getting all that, Jimmy Buffett. And so I would probably use the title field to say that he's the son, like the relationship or the title in the family because you don't really have titles and families. But now when I go to the Buffett family, I get a list of who the siblings are, stuff like that. So yes, that would be one way to do it. Donna says, perfect, thank you. You're welcome, Donna. Okay, I will quickly unmute everybody and take questions from here or comments if you use this feature. A lot of people don't because ACT started out without it, and a lot of people don't need it if you just deal with individuals and not companies. But if you do deal with companies, this is a good way to kind of make the database a little more sophisticated. Geoff, what would be the point in using a company versus a group? Well, a group is exactly the same thing as a company. You'll see here, they're just collections of contacts. Generally with groups, they're more like my A targets or my Pennsylvania customers. That's a group. You'll see here we have a group called NADI board members. They all work at different companies. But what I'm doing is I'm organizing these 5 people because there's something special about them. And then ACT has always had groups from day one. And I think ACT saw a lot of people were using groups to manage companies because they would say, this is my Microsoft group, or this is my, Blue Cross Blue Shield group. And so they just kind of pulled it out a little bit into companies. The plumbing is very similar. You can see that the groups, if I go to groups here, they have divisions as well. They're called subgroups instead of divisions. I think some people trying to manage companies but calling them groups got confusing, so they created companies. Hope that answers your question. Anybody have any other questions? I have several contacts within companies, yet a search of secondary contacts comes up empty. Yeah, you know what? Don't ever use secondary contacts. Paul asked this question, and I'll just talk about that for a minute. If I have a guy down here, secondary contact, I never teach this, but I will just say that this could be another person somehow associated with Jimmy. Sometimes I put in here like Joe Lawyer, and that's Jimmy's lawyer, or agent we'll call him. Don't really want him in the database. Well, it's got to have a name. Sorry, Joe the agent. And now I have this guy, but I cannot search for him. When you do a lookup, it does not search secondary, so they're unfindable. What you can do with Joe is I can promote him and make him a contact. So if you use secondary contacts, just make him contacts. It used to be, in the old days, people would make this the company at top. When there was no company, they'd make the contact kind of the company record with the main contact, and then all the other people that work there would be subs. You cannot log history against secondaries. You can't search on secondaries. So I don't like using this feature. I just give everybody a record, and then I organize them into companies. So I would actually go back to Joe the agent here, and I would promote him to a contact. And yeah, don't worry about that. And so Joe is now part of the Buffett family because I promoted him from within the record. If I go back to the Buffett family company, there's Joe the agent. Now I can log history against him. I can log emails with him. I can put documents in his record. All things I can't do if he's a secondary contact. So I actually hide that secondary tab sometimes. If people don't know about it, get it out of there. All right. Any more questions before I switch databases? Just because I wanted to tell you what was next week's. I have to look on my calendar, see what the next week's topic is. A lot of people use companies, and I've seen that topic or that feature get badly used. People think they have to type in the entire company, then type in the entire contact, and then manually link them, and that's doesn't Doesn't like my database. All right, well, you'll get an email saying what next week's topic. I don't know why my database wouldn't come up. It's coming up. It's got to. I should have them on a piece of paper, but I keep them in ACT and I was in the wrong database.